Sirens blared as the ambulance raced down the suburban street, its tires screeching around the corner. Inside, the EMTs worked feverishly to stabilize the elderly patient whose life hung by a thread. But as the ambulance approached the gated community, a lone figure stepped into the road, arms outstretched. "Stop the vehicle," the woman shouted, her voice shrill and commanding. The driver slammed on the brakes, the tires leaving marks on the pavement as the ambulance skidded to a halt mere feet from the obstinate woman. "What the hell is wrong with you?" the driver yelled, leaping out of the cab. "We have a critical patient on board who needs immediate medical attention." The woman, clad in an expensive sundress and oversized sunglasses, held her ground. "I'm the president of the Homeowners Association, and I cannot allow you to enter our community. You're disrupting the peace." The EMTs emerged from the back of the ambulance, the patient's condition rapidly deteriorating. "Ma'am, please move aside," one of them pleaded. "This is a life-and-death situation." But the HOA president refused to budge. "Absolutely not. You'll have to find another way in." She glared defiantly, her lips pursed in an unyielding scowl. The driver turned to the EMTs, his face etched with desperation. "We've got to get him to the hospital now, or he's not going to make it." He tried to maneuver the ambulance around the woman, but she stepped in front of the vehicle, blocking its path. "I said no," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "Now turn around and leave, or I'll have you all arrested for trespassing." The EMTs exchanged anguished looks, the precious seconds ticking away. The patient's condition was deteriorating rapidly, and they were powerless to help. The driver clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white as he weighed his options. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt nearby, and a middle-aged man burst out, his face twisted with fury. "What the hell is going on here?" he shouted, storming towards the standoff. The HOA president turned, her expression shifting from obstinate to smug. "Ah, Mr. Henderson, I'm so glad you're here. These people are trespassing and causing a disturbance. I need you to have them removed immediately." Henderson's gaze swept over the scene, taking in the desperate EMTs and the ailing patient. His eyes narrowed as he recognized the gravity of the situation. "Are you out of your mind, Karen?" he growled. "This is an emergency. Get out of the way and let them through." "I will do no such thing," the HOA president retorted, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. "The rules are the rules, and I'm not about to bend them for anyone, not even a so-called emergency." Henderson's face flushed with rage. "This isn't some petty rule violation, you idiot. There's a man's life at stake." He stepped towards the woman, his fists clenched. The EMTs watched in stunned silence, their patient's life slipping away with every passing second. The driver clenched his jaw, his mind racing as he tried to find a way to get through the obstruction without resorting to violence. The tension in the air was palpable, as the two combatants squared off, their clash of wills threatening to escalate into a physical confrontation. The fate of the patient hung in the balance, the ticking clock of his life a constant, haunting presence. As the standoff between Henderson and the HOA president reached a boiling point, a sudden movement from the ambulance drew their attention. The lead EMT had pulled out his phone and was frantically dialing a number. "What do you think you're doing?" the HOA president demanded, her voice dripping with menace. The EMT held up a hand, silencing her. "I'm calling the governor's office. This is a life-or-death emergency, and you're obstructing our ability to provide medical care. They'll put a stop to this immediately." The HOA president's eyes widened in shock, the color draining from her face. "The governor's office? You can't do that." She whirled around to face Henderson, her composure slipping. "Do something. You're the head of the neighborhood watch, for God's sake." Henderson crossed his arms, a grim smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Sorry, Karen, but this is way above my pay grade. The EMT's right. You're putting a man's life in jeopardy, and that's not something the governor's office is going to take lightly." The HOA president's expression morphed into one of pure panic as the EMT continued his conversation, his voice growing increasingly urgent. "Yes, ma'am, we have a critical situation here. The president of the HOA is refusing to allow our ambulance access to the community, and the patient's condition is rapidly deteriorating. We need immediate intervention." As the EMT's words trailed off, a deafening silence descended upon the scene. The HOA president stood motionless, her face a mask of dread, while Henderson watched with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The minutes ticked by, the patient's labored breathing the only sound that broke the eerie stillness. The EMCs hovered anxiously, their faces etched with worry, as they waited for the cavalry to arrive. Suddenly, the roar of sirens pierced the air, and a procession of police cars and state troopers came barreling down the street, their lights flashing. The HOA president's jaw dropped as the vehicles screeched to a halt, and a grim-faced contingent of officials emerged. "Ma'am, please step aside," a state trooper commanded, his voice firm and unyielding. "You're obstructing a medical emergency, and that's a serious offense. Move, or we'll have to remove you." The HOA president's eyes darted around, her expression one of pure desperation. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words died on her lips as she caught sight of the stern, uncompromising faces of the officials. With a defeated sigh, she stepped aside, allowing the ambulance to continue its desperate race to the hospital. As the vehicle disappeared around the corner, the HOA president stood alone, her shoulders slumped, the weight of her actions bearing down on her like a crushing burden. Henderson watched the scene unfold, a grim satisfaction etched on his face. He knew that the consequences of the HOA president's actions would be far-reaching, and that she had just made a costly, and potentially irreversible, mistake. The air was thick with tension as the officials gathered around the HOA president, their voices low and serious. The future of the gated community hung in the balance, and the once powerful HOA president found herself on the wrong side of the law, her authority and reputation in tatters. As the state troopers escorted the HOA president away, Henderson approached the lead EMT, his expression serious. "How's the patient doing?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. The EMT shook his head grimly. "It was a close call, but we managed to stabilize him and get him to the hospital just in time. He's in critical condition, but the doctors are optimistic he'll pull through." Henderson let out a sigh of relief, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Thank God. I can't believe that woman would be so heartless as to block an ambulance in an emergency." The EMT nodded, his face etched with disgust. "She's the definition of a Karen. Power-hungry, entitled, and completely detached from the reality of what's at stake. I'm just glad we were able to get through to the governor's office in time." Henderson's expression darkened. "Oh, this is far from over. That woman's going to face some serious consequences for her actions. The governor's office won't take this lightly, and neither will the rest of the community." The EMT raised an eyebrow. "You really think he'll go that far?" Henderson nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. This kind of abuse of power and disregard for human life isn't going to be swept under the rug. The HOA president has crossed a line, and she's going to have to answer for it." The EMT's lips curved into a grim smile. "Good. Maybe this will teach her and others like her a lesson of the importance of compassion and common decency." A commotion nearby drew their attention, and they turned to see the HOA president being led away by the state troopers, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. "This isn't over," she shouted, her voice shrill and desperate. "I'll have your jobs for this. You can't do this to me." The troopers ignored her outbursts, guiding her firmly towards the waiting police cars. Henderson and the EMT watched in silence, their expressions a mix of satisfaction and concern. "I wonder what kind of fallout this is going to have on the community," the EMT mused, his gaze fixed on the retreating figure of the HOA president. Henderson sighed heavily. "Honestly, I'm not sure. But one thing's for certain, this is going to shake things up, and it's not going to be pretty. He turned to the EMT, his eyes grave. I hope you and your team are prepared for the aftermath. This is only the beginning. The EMT nodded, his expression resolute. We'll be ready, and we'll make sure that justice is served, no matter what it takes. The two men stood in silence, the weight of the situation hanging palpably in the air. The fate of the gated community, and the lives of its residents, now hung in the balance, with the HOA president's actions serving as the catalyst for a reckoning that would have far-reaching consequences. In the days that followed, the news of the HOA president's actions spread like wildfire through the community and beyond. The local media had quickly picked up on the story, and it wasn't long before it had become a national headline. The governor's office had wasted no time in launching a full investigation into the incident, and the HOA president found herself the subject of intense scrutiny. She had been swiftly suspended from her position, pending the outcome of the investigation, and the community was in an uproar. Henderson, who had been the one to intervene and call the governor's office, had become something of a local hero. Residents who had previously been apathetic or even antagonistic towards him now sought him out, eager to express their gratitude and support. I can't believe she did that, one neighbor, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, said as she approached Henderson on the street. I mean, blocking an ambulance in a life-or-death situation. That's just unforgivable. Henderson nodded solemnly. I know. It's a shocking abuse of power, and the consequences are going to be severe. The governor's office is taking this very seriously. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. I just hope that poor man made it to the hospital in time. It's a miracle you were there to step in and call for help. It was a close call, but the EMTs were able to stabilize him and get him to the hospital, Henderson replied, his expression grim. But the damage has been done, and this community is going to have to deal with the fallout. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? What kind of fallout are we talking about? Henderson sighed heavily. Well, for starters, the HOA's reputation is in tatters. Nobody's going to trust them after this, and there's a good chance the entire board could be dissolved and replaced. But that's just the beginning. He paused, his gaze darkening. The governor's office is also looking into potential civil and criminal charges against the HOA president. And if they find that the HOA's policies and practices have been enabling this kind of abuse, the entire community could be facing some serious legal and financial consequences. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. You mean like lawsuits and fines? But how is that even possible? It's a real possibility, Henderson replied grimly. The HOA president's actions have put the entire community on the map, and the governor's office is going to be looking at this with a fine-toothed comb. Anything they find that suggests a pattern of abuse or negligence could be grounds for serious legal action. Sarah shook her head, her expression a mix of disbelief and concern. I can't even imagine what that would mean for our property values and the overall quality of life here. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Henderson nodded in agreement. That's exactly what I'm worried about. This could have far-reaching consequences that go beyond just the HOA president's personal downfall. The entire community is at risk, and we're going to have to band together to weather the storm. As Sarah walked away, a growing sense of unease settled over the neighborhood. The fallout from the HOA president's actions was only just beginning, and the residents were bracing themselves for a turbulent and uncertain future. In the weeks that followed, the investigation into the HOA president's actions continued to intensify, with the governor's office leaving no stone unturned. The community found itself in the unwelcome spotlight as reporters and investigators swarmed the area, seeking to uncover the full extent of the alleged abuses. The HOA president, who had been released on bail, found herself the subject of intense public scrutiny. She had been stripped of her position and was facing a litany of civil and criminal charges, including obstruction of emergency medical services, abuse of power, and dereliction of duty. As the investigation progressed, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. It became clear that the HOA's policies and practices had long been a source of contention within the community, with numerous complaints and grievances filed over the years. However, these concerns had largely been dismissed or swept under the rug by the HOA leadership. The revelations were damning, and they quickly sparked outrage among the residents. Many felt betrayed by the very organization that was supposed to protect their interests and maintain the character of the neighborhood. "I can't believe this has been going on for so long," said Sarah, the same neighbor who had spoken to Henderson earlier. "The HOA was supposed to be here to serve us, not abuse their power and put our lives at risk." Henderson, who had been closely following the investigation, nodded in agreement. "It's worse than we thought. The HOA president's actions were just the tip of the iceberg. This community has been suffering under a culture of entitlement and abuse for years." He paused, his expression grave. "And the fallout is going to be massive. The governor's office is talking about dissolving the HOA altogether and putting the community under a state-appointed receivership until a new governing body can be established." Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. "You mean the HOA is going to be gone? What does that even mean for us?" Henderson sighed heavily. "It means a lot of uncertainty and upheaval. Without the HOA, there won't be any clear structure or authority to oversee things like maintenance, security, and enforcement of community rules. It's going to be a chaotic transition." "But what about our property values?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with worry. "If the HOA is dissolved, won't that tank the value of our homes?" Henderson nodded grimly. "It's a distinct possibility. The loss of the HOA could be seen as a significant liability by potential buyers, and that could drive down property values across the board. It's a nightmare scenario for everyone who's invested in this community." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "This is just unbelievable. How could the HOA president have let things get this bad? Doesn't she realize the damage she's done?" Henderson's expression hardened. "Oh, she knows. But I don't think she cares. She was more interested in wielding her power than in serving the community. And now, we're all going to pay the price for her arrogance and negligence." The two stood in silence, the weight of the situation hanging heavy in the air. The once idyllic gated community was now facing an uncertain and turbulent future, all because of the actions of a single, power-hungry individual. And the residents were bracing themselves for the fallout to come. As the investigation into the HOA president's actions continued to unfold, the community's sense of unease and uncertainty only deepened. Rumors and speculation ran rampant, with residents wondering what the ultimate fate of their neighborhood might be. The prospect of the HOA being dissolved and the community being placed under state-appointed receivership was a source of particular anxiety. Many residents worried that such a drastic measure would lead to a decline in property values, a deterioration of community services, and a breakdown in the social fabric that had once defined the gated enclave. "I just don't understand how it all went so wrong," said Sarah, her brow furrowed in a mix of confusion and concern. "This was supposed to be a safe, well-maintained community. Now it feels like everything is falling apart." Henderson, who had become a de facto leader in the community's response to the crisis, sighed heavily. "It's a mess, there's no denying that. But the truth is, the HOA was never as perfect as it seemed. There were always underlying issues, problems that were swept under the rug or ignored by the people in charge." He paused, his expression darkening. "And now, all of that is coming to the surface. The HOA president's actions were the catalyst, but the real problem is the systemic abuse of power and lack of accountability that's been going on for years." Sarah nodded, her face etched with worry. "So, what does that mean for us? For our homes, our investments, our way of life?" Henderson shook his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of empathy and uncertainty. "I wish I had a clear answer for you, Sarah. The truth is, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. The state's receivership plans are still being developed, and the full extent of the community's legal and financial exposure is still being assessed. He paused, his gaze scanning the neighborhood around them. But one thing is clear. This community is going to have to undergo a fundamental transformation. The old ways of doing things, the entitlement and the abuse of power, that's all going to have to change. And it's going to be a painful process, both emotionally and financially. Sarah's shoulders slumped, the weight of the situation bearing down on her. But how can we even begin to rebuild? How do we move forward from something like this? Henderson reached out and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. It won't be easy, that's for sure. But we're going to have to come together as a community, put aside our differences, and work towards a new vision for this place. One that's built on transparency, accountability, and a genuine commitment to serving the needs of all the residents. He paused, his expression hardening. And we're going to have to hold the people responsible for this mess accountable. The HOA president, the board members, anyone who was complicit in the abuse of power. They're going to have to face the consequences of their actions. Sarah nodded, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. You're right. We can't just sit back and let this happen to us. We have to fight, to take back control of our community and our future. Henderson smiled, a spark of hope igniting within him. That's the spirit, Sarah. This isn't going to be easy, but if we stand together, we can rebuild something better, something that truly reflects the values and aspirations of this community. As the two of them turned and walked away, the weight of the task ahead hung heavy in the air. But for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of purpose and resolve, a determination to confront the challenges head-on and chart a new course for the embattled neighborhood. In the months that followed, the community found itself embroiled in a complex and multifaceted battle to overcome the fallout from the HOA president's actions. The state-appointed receivership had taken over the management of the gated enclave, and a team of lawyers, financial experts, and community organizers had been tasked with untangling the web of issues that had plagued the HOA for years. The process was slow, arduous, and often contentious, as residents grappled with the implications of the sweeping changes that were being implemented. Property values had indeed taken a significant hit, as potential buyers shied away from the uncertainty and negative publicity surrounding the community, and the loss of the familiar HOA structure had left many residents feeling adrift, unsure of where to turn for the services and amenities they had once taken for granted. But amidst the turmoil, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. Under the guidance of the receivership team, a new vision for the community was taking shape, one that prioritized transparency, accountability, and the collective well-being of all the residents. It's been a hell of a journey, that's for sure, said Henderson, as he met with a group of his neighbors in the community center. But I truly believe that we're on the cusp of something great, a chance to rebuild this place from the ground up, and to create a model of what a truly inclusive, equitable, and responsive community can look like. The residents listened intently, their faces a mix of skepticism and cautious optimism. Sarah, who had become a vocal advocate for change, spoke up. I have to admit, I was really worried about what the receivership would mean for us. But the more I've seen of their plans, the more I'm starting to believe that this could be a positive turning point for our community. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled group. Of course, it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to put in a lot of hard work to overcome our own biases and divisions and to really embrace a new way of doing things. But if we can do that, I truly believe that we can build something special here. Henderson nodded, his expression earnest. Exactly. This isn't just about fixing the problems of the past. It's about creating a new vision for the future. And that's going to require all of us to step up, to get involved, and to work together in ways we've never done before. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. But I know that we're up to the challenge. Because at the end of the day, this is our community, and we're the ones who have the power to shape its destiny. The residents murmured in agreement, the air thick with a sense of purpose and determination. The road ahead was undoubtedly going to be long and arduous, but there was a palpable energy in the room, a belief that through collective effort and a shared commitment to change, they could indeed create something truly remarkable. As the meeting drew to a close, Henderson couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The future may have been uncertain, but he knew that the residents of this community were ready to rise to the occasion, to confront the challenges head-on, and to build a better, more equitable future for themselves and for generations to come. In the years that followed, the gated community underwent a remarkable transformation, rising from the ashes of the HOA scandal to become a shining example of what can be achieved when a community comes together with a shared vision and a commitment to change. Under the guidance of the state-appointed receivership, a new governance structure was established, one that emphasized transparency, accountability, and the active participation of all the residents. Gone were the days of the all-powerful HOA president and the insular, unresponsive board. In their place, a diverse and elected community council took the helm, with representatives from every corner of the neighborhood working together to address the needs and concerns of the people they served. The transition was not without its challenges, of course. There were heated debates, contentious town hall meetings, and even moments of outright conflict as the residents grappled with the complexities of this new era. But through it all, a spirit of resilience and determination prevailed, as the community rallied around a shared vision of a better future. "It hasn't been easy, that's for sure," said Sarah, who had become a prominent member of the community council. "But looking back, I can see how far we've come. This place is unrecognizable from the way it used to be, and that's a good thing." She smiled, her eyes alight with pride. "The new governance model has really empowered the residents, giving us a real voice in the decisions that affect our lives. And the community services and amenities have never been better, all while maintaining a strong sense of the neighborhood's character and charm." Henderson, who had remained a steadfast advocate for change, nodded in agreement. "It's been a long, hard road, but I truly believe we've created something special here. A community that's not just about fancy homes and strict rules, but about people, their needs, their aspirations, and their sense of belonging." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the bustling streets of the neighborhood. "And the best part is, we're just getting started. There's so much more we can do, so many ways we can continue to grow and evolve as a community. The future is bright, and it's all because we were willing to confront the challenges head-on and work together to build something better." As the sun began to set over the transformed community, a sense of pride and accomplishment hung in the air. The residents had weathered a storm of controversy and uncertainty, but in the end, they had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. It was a testament to the power of community, to the ability of people to come together and reshape their own destinies. And as the community council convened for their weekly meeting, the members knew that the journey was far from over, but that they were more than ready to tackle the challenges that lay ahead.